So, hello and welcome everyone who's listening to this episode. I've got a very interesting and special guest today in Tatiana Merry. I've had the great fortune of working with Tatiana, talking to her over the last, I guess, multiple months and a couple of years. And what I have seen in this entire journey, whenever we've interacted with Tatiana, is her curiosity to go after a lot of deep cybersecurity topics, think about them more than just what's at the surface, and try and look at how that relates to humans. And that's where I feel she has this very unique vantage point, unique perspective, where everything's just sort of relating back to people. And, that really is what matters because at the end of the day, whether we talk about security or infosec or cyber or online behavior, it all boils down finally to, well, how as people do we perceive it? What do we do with that piece of information? How do we interface with it? How do we interact with it? So that said, I'll let Tatiana introduce herself as well. Welcome aboard. Thank you for joining this conversation. I'm so excited to have this with you.
Thanks so much, Shashank. Happy to be here. As you said, it's a very wide, fast-moving industry that we are in. But as you said, I am Tatiana Merry. I am a governance, risk, and compliance director at Ziff Davis. I do a lot of technical things, but my biggest passion is humans, right? And specifically, I focus on how do we change our security posture and decrease our cyber risk by changing human behavior. But before we change our human behavior, we need to understand it, right? Something to change, we need to understand it, before we, as we say in technical words, before we protect something, we need to know what we're protecting. So besides my day-to-day job, I'm also a cyber psychology advocate, and I'm enrolled in a cyber psychology course right now, where we'll say program that I am going to provide more information how it relates to cybersecurity and how everything is around everything that we develop and see in day-to-day life, especially technology, is related to human psychology. So I'll provide more information on that.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. And let's start right there, Tatiana. You kind of hit the nail on the head, your interest in the sort of human ramifications, the human aspects of it, and you put that word forward. You already kind of introduced it, cyber psychology. And I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with that word, but it's very intriguing. It kind of builds up a mystery about it. So, sort of unravel that. Help us understand what exactly is cyber psychology? What is that concept? How does it play? And how should people think about it?
Sure. So before I explain, let me ask you a question. What do you think when I say cybersecurity, right? You think about technology, you think about firewalls, you think about passwords, you think about endpoint protection, right? Well, here's the thing that we've been saying for a long time, at least, for 10 years that I've been in the field, is that 80% of the successful cyber attacks are due to a human element, right? And we've been saying this over and over again, which, by the way, I really don't like that. We're basically saying that humans are the weakest link, and in my view, I think are the strongest opportunity. But we've been saying this, but we never asked why. Like, why are majority of the incidents or cybersecurity incident data breaches are due to the human element, 80% of them? Well, that's exactly what cyber psychology does, right? It's the field that's asking the question, why? Why do smart, trained, security-aware people still click on that phishing email? Why do people hand over their credentials to someone they've never met, right? Why does the urgency make us, take bad action, make big decisions, even though we know better? So it's the study that studies our mind, and specifically studies the responses that we get when a human interacts with technology and what those responses do to us over time. So I think it's very relevant, specific in the time we live with AI and everything that's going on around us. So yeah, usually, the bad guys are not hacking system, they are hacking human minds. And as we say, 80% of the time. So that's in a nutshell cyber psychology, if I could put it more simply.
Excellent. Yeah, I love that. And actually, you touched upon a couple of points there, Tatiana, which has kind of piqued my interest. You're right. Oftentimes, in fact, the fact that humans succumb to these, sort of failings, if you may, or they're just maybe more trusting. And then you change that sort of, pivoted over, I would say, from thinking of humans as weaknesses to strength or opportunity, where you said like, hey, they're not the weakest link, they're actually the strongest opportunity, if I heard you right. Um,
Yep.
that's an interesting framing by itself, which I guess is alluding to the fact that it's important for us to understand the behavior or the drivers of why people are doing what they're doing. And this is where perhaps cyber psychology also plays a big role. And then once we understand that, we might be able to influence it positively or maybe even stop certain kinds of behaviors potentially, right? Like, is that how you're kind of thinking about this as a broader discipline, as a broader approach?
Absolutely. So we need to understand this. People behavior and psychology didn't change.
Mm-hmm.
Technology did, right? So we've been wired like this for millions of years, right? Nothing really changed. Very little change in the human psychology. We're understanding a little bit more than we did maybe 100 years ago, but we are kind of the same. We're built the same. So to kind of introduce you to, why I think humans are the strongest opportunities that awakens link, let me start first to understanding the underlying problem, right? Before we talk
Mm-hmm.
about how can we actually empower humans to be, to be our first layer of defense.
Right.
So you probably have learned or heard about what attention economy is, right? And we've been in attention economy, I think, for the last 20 years, more so. It's that idea of the social media, all the platforms are competing for your time, when you cannot put your phone down, you can scroll forever, the notifications, the likes, infinity scrolling, right? It's real, right? We known about it, but I want to introduce you to something that it's a little bit more dangerous and actually more insidious. That's going to give you an understanding. Researchers are call it attachment economy. So we move from attention to attachment economy. That, if I can put it more easily in human terms, is attachment hacking. So what exactly that is? When attention economy wanted our time, the attachment economy wants our attachment economy wants our trust. And they're using AI for that, right? AI is kind of like at the core of everything. So think of this way. Think of a difference between mindlessly scrolling through Instagram, TikTok, and then talking to an AI companion, who seems very genuine, understanding you, knows your name, right? Scrolling feels a little bit shallow compared to talking to somebody who you confide your deepest thoughts, your deepest vulnerabilities, right? You can recognize that you spend too much time on your phone, you can put it down, you have something in your hand, right? With AI companion, where, AI character, building AI character, whatever that may be, it's different. It's more insidious, it's actually more dangerous, and it's harder to spot, right? Because it seems like normal, right? It's nothing. If you see a child with like a teenager with their phone in their hand, just kind of like spending time. It's not games, but kind of talking, maybe even think they're doing their homework, but actually they're sharing their deep thoughts. It's very different, right? Because it's emotional attachment. It's not a tool that you're attached to. So AI feeds you're constantly advocating for your reward system. It's always available. It never gets tired, right? It validates your feelings. You can imagine what does to your human brain. What I'll explain actually what does to your human brain. It actually hacks the attachment that we've been wired for millions of years to get from our caregivers, right? The attachment, if you think about our caregivers, child and a parent, it's kind of the same underlying issue. So it hacks that attachment. But yeah, it's a very deep, and I don't think many people speak about it because it's very difficult to understand what it does. And we as humans, the cues that we look in a real human, if I want to build a trusted relationship with you, Shashank, it's going to build over time. It's going to be consistent. I'm going to look for certain body language, right? For specific cues that we kind of developed over millions of years that kept us alive. Well, those cues were not developed to be actually for the online life, only for physical life. But when we interact online, our brain doesn't make a difference because we don't know it. It's never been, it's not even a skill that it can be passed from a previous generation because we've never experienced such phenomenon like we are experiencing now. So it's different. It's very different.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, you touched upon so many interesting pieces here, and I can, as you were speaking to it, I could almost feel it, if you may, right? Like one
Mhm.
part that you mentioned is, um, hey, from attention to attachment, and
Mhm.
I can see that unfolding. I find that to be super scary, honestly. Just personally kind of experiencing that, but yeah, you can get lost, right? And AI is also pretending to be very human or human-like. So,
Yeah.
that's another sort of thing that as humans we can easily fall for, right? We can get attached, right? Using
By
what
the way,
we
it's not
call.
accidental. Shashank, sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
to
No,
feel
please.
as human, it's not accidental.
It's by
Just to
design.
give you a little bit, add you a little bit on that. All of these tools are built with the human psychology understanding behind it. So
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever heard about, there is a lab at Stanford University, and it was led by Dr. Fogg, and I believe was the persuasive, can't remember the whole name now. I will look it up and let you know. But the lab was opened in 1998 at Stanford University, and the whole aim and idea is to study how can human get addicted to technology, right? So they kind of
Okay.
for 10 years they actually that's what they did. That's the main study, the main research, and after that, I believe they turned into a course that anyone could take. And the whole idea when you take the course is the kind of like the outcome is to come out with an app that you can get as much engagement and as much attachment I can call it now, but
Right.
addiction from the users, right? So if you think about the like button was developed in that lab, the comment, right? If you see the comments, the likes of all the social media that we use, is all developed in that lab, right? All the colors of the notification, the forever scrolling and the reels, right? Everything was actually developed, but they all studied the human psychology to actually develop that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So again, it's not accidental. Everything has been developed with a purpose, with the purpose to kind of, what our brain doesn't know it's manufactured. It's a manufactured feeling, where it's not a real feeling, but it's manufactured. But our brain doesn't make the difference. It's very
Right,
difficult to
right.
make the difference.
No, that's again, sort of as you are digging into it, as I mentioned, not only scary, but it seems like by design, it's playing on those sort of inherent traits, right, or
Mm-hmm.
inherent reactions that humans have to these kinds of, outputs or outcomes. They experience something, and then, they sort of their brain or their nervous system wires it in a certain way and makes them respond in a certain way. So by means of these systems pretending to be humans, right, if you
Yep.
could say that, or at least be very human-like in their behavior,
Mm-hmm.
um, they're causing bigger issues, right? Like cyber is one big issue, and I think extending to that, it's perhaps even impacting us, right? The way we think, the way we behave, the way we act, right? And
Absolutely.
so that's
Absolutely.
where I think, like, I would like to like understand a bit more. I know you've been studying this quite closely, and you've already sort of started illustrating some of that right now in our conversation, but you think there's an intent to definitely sort of weaponize this in a way, I would assume. Like the builders are aware, is what you're saying. Psychology is studied behind this. There is almost like think of it as an experiment being taken out in the wild, right? It's
Yep.
being deployed in the wild to, at scale.
Yep.
So, how do you see that? Like, from both standpoints, and I'd love to get both your viewpoints. One is from the builder standpoint. Is this something that very knowingly these folks who are building these systems are kind of walking in, weaponizing this? What's your sort of take there? And then the other way around, people who are experiencing it, each one of us, if you may, and certainly the generation that is born with this native experience, being hooked onto it from very early age. Um, you think
Yep.
there is any sort of way out of this? It just seems like we're going to get more and more succumbed into this whole attention attachment and perhaps some, doomsday type of an end, right? Like, should this keep getting weaponized? So, like, tell me a bit more from both standpoints. Like, what's the learnings there? What's the research? What have you figured out, right, in both these areas? It's fascinating.
It's so. Let me tell you, I truly believe in my heart. I hope the developers, and I think everybody should watch the documentary called The Doc. I believe it's already on Netflix, if I'm not mistaken. It's a good documentary where they actually talk to all of the big developers in AI specifically, the open AI and Anthropic and so on and so forth. And it will give you both everybody a better understanding. But I truly hope they nobody goes and develops a tool with the, what I hope, with the malicious intent. I think the developers, what the problem is, it's a race right now. Shashank, and you know very well, it's a race who has the best, the fastest tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very well financed. And it's, you know, I think it was was it a financial guy that said, show me the outcome and I'll show you the incentive. If you look at the outcome, you will understand the incentive with AI and what it moves, right? So I don't have to, you know, describe that part that well. It's well understood. I think there is not enough voices. I think there is enough voices, but not on big scale to actually demand more ethical building of AI in general. There is not much regulation at the moment. If you think about it, yeah, there is AI regulation, AI Act in Europe, but in US specifically, which if you think about US is the biggest, you know, it's the race between China, US, and so on and so forth. I don't think there is enough push to make AI ethical, to look at specifically when it comes to, because if you think about Gen Z and all the youngest generation, the ones who are gonna get affected the most, right? Because they're the one who actually grew up with AI. So we should ask all of us together, and us being in this industry for a while now, how did we contribute to get here and what can we do, right? Because it's on us. They did not ask for all of these new innovative tools. It's great. They are, first of all, I want to say there is a lot of benefits from it, right? I'm not saying they're absolutely negative, but it's always who's going to have the power, who's going to have the tool, and what they're going to do with it. We never know. And things change all the time. So that's why we have to put some guardrails around in case that the tools is in somebody's wrong hands with wrong intention, right? But as a I always look at this, you know, and I explain to parents specifically, because parents are the most concerned. The kids are kind of growing up and it's the norm for them. But if you think about all the industrial revolution before, because that's what AI is doing, it's another industrial revolution, right? If you think about, we had time to learn, adapt, and pass those skills to the next generation. There is a lot of time. With AI, we don't. Parents cannot guide them and teach them because they don't understand it. They don't have the experience. Kids know more about than the parents do. So that's a big problem. There is no guidance there because they never learned the skill. They don't know how it works. They don't have the time. You move so fast. Me, being in this industry, I feel like I go to sleep and I'm already behind. It's just moving so fast, right?
Right.
So interesting study that's been done by a colleague of mine. She's done a deepfake study, and she surveyed over 100 people aged 6 to 65. And you'll be shocked that the technical professionals scored only 2% higher than the non-technical.
They all couldn't find out. They all thought it was genuine content.
Yeah. Basically, I think it was like 80 and 82, right? Were like there was not a big difference.
Right.
So what that tells you is this is not a technical skill; it's a human skill, right? And more interesting was the people she surveyed, 65 and higher. They all answered correctly to the videos and pictures they were experienced in life. Again, we're going to the skill. They had the experience.
Yeah.
Either they saw, you know, I don't know, a little squirrel eating an almond, right? Because they've seen it before. But any content that they've never seen before, they couldn't guess it. They couldn't tell the difference. So it's very interesting, the study, what it tells you. So again, I know the problem is it's always money, right? Incentive, let's call it incentive more than money, monetary. But it is a time that we've never seen before. It's a time that it's very difficult to navigate. And the problem is we don't have time to stop and understand it. And that's the danger of it.
It's moving. Yeah.
It's moving all the time, and you don't have the time to catch your breath and, you know, learn something. We can't even learn from our mistakes. Think about how many cases are with, you know, AI blackmailing an engineer, or there is just few cases that we know of it, but we don't have time to actually stop, think, understand it, put some guardrails in it, move on. It's just very fast. So I think that's the problem that we face with with today. When we say AI is just such a big, it's like cybersecurity, but in
Fully.
general, the era that we live now, called this industrial revolution of AI, let's call it that way.
No, totally, totally. And I think they're kind of converging also, right? Like the whole sort of cyber threat with AI is
Mm-hmm.
getting accelerated. So 100%, we are on the same page, and I kind of worry about it also. Just the pace of change. It's too fast, too many things happening all at once in parallel.
Yep.
And I think for
Yep.
anyone to even understand the ramifications of what they should do, that by itself is a very complicated task. And even for folks like you and I and others who play in this space, for us, it's hard to keep pace. I can imagine for those who are not just living, breathing this every day, it's even harder, right? Like, and as you mentioned, you go to sleep and the world has changed by the time you wake up. And for those folks who are kind of interacting with it off and on, they're totally out of sync. They don't know what has occurred since. Um, One question that I want to ask, and this is more
Mm-hmm.
of just an opinion or a take, and you spoke about deep fakes and that experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking about this also. So it's almost like seems dichotomous to me at some level. Let's just take deep fakes as a case in point. Like
Mm-hmm.
video technology, AI video technology is getting better every day. And we've been celebrating it because, sure, it is worth celebrating from a technology innovation standpoint. Earlier the AI videos could be easily spotted because they looked very AI-like. There were things in it, the way it moved, the way things happened. You could look at it, at least to the discerning eye, and say, well, that doesn't look natural, right?
Yep.
Now, though, the current ones that I see myself out there in the wild, it's extremely hard. I mean, to my eyes, they look like normal video. Somebody could have shot it. That could be a person. That may have happened on the street, right? Like, it's very difficult to figure out, at least from my own personal experience. Like, you really have to work deeper into that if you would even spot anything. What is that going to cause? Because we're also seeing that kind of, looping back with cyber threat. We're seeing these fake personas coming up, voice calls being fake voice calls, which is leading people to transfer money or do some funny things that otherwise they wouldn't, or the relatives or fake relatives calling people up to say, hey, I'm in
Mm-hmm.
distress, come help me. All these things are unfolding for real. I mean, the cases are relatively fewer, but I don't see any reason why they would not expand in a big pace because it's working, right? What's
Absolutely.
the way out of that? Do we have a way out, or we're just like doomed? Like what's happening there?
Shashank, that's a good question because you never think of trust much until it's jeopardized, right? You
True.
don't see anything about trust, right? Well, how you form trust until that trust, somebody betrayed you or something where in general trust, the idea of trust is jeopardized. That's where
Hmm.
we are right now.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
whole idea of trust, it's in jeopardy.
Right.
You don't trust anything. I remember, that saying, I remember how you trust everything that's on the internet, right? It was kind of like a joke, right?
Hmm.
But actually is reality. And I'm gonna tell you why the trust is broken and how can we find a way to it. So if you think from a trust perspective, all brains are very remarkable at pattern recognition machines, right? In a
Right.
physical world, that's like a strength. We read faces, tone of voice, body language, or we make a rapid, usually pretty good judgment decisions, right? Well, the problem is that AI has learned to speak like that language fluidly, right?
Right.
That's what's built on, right?
Yeah,
There
yeah.
is well-established framework, there is a very from a research perspective, there is a from a psychological actually perspective, there is a very interesting theory called social present theory,
Okay.
which describes how the more human a communication feels, the more a communication like human feels, right? Like warm and familiar faces, the more our trust response is activated, right? So that's why that AI
Right.
campaign, it's warm, it's listens to you, it gives you praises, it validates your feelings. But again, we go back, the brain doesn't understand it's manufactured, right? So how do we rewire trust? Because that's we need to rewire trust, right, into detection skill. That's what we are. We need to rewire trust into detection skills. And it starts with the principle of slow down automation response, right?
Right. Right.
That's
Right.
another problem that we kind of like, right, if you think
Mm.
about, we are so, everything is fast, notification, calls, phones. You put down, I think I was reading a study that says that a regular American checks their phone 186 times a day. 186
I tell
times a
you,
day.
I'm
That's
one
a
of those,
lot,
I
right?
think.
Exactly. We almost everybody is, right?
That's true.
So
But we're
our gut is,
overstimulated. Like,
Exactly, right? So that's number one. We need to slow that automated response, right?
mhm.
Because we automated like yes, yes, no, no. So our gut instinct fires first, right? And then, which is that's a vulnerability in itself, right? If anyone is interested, likes to read, I'll recommend the book. It's called Fast and Slow Thinking. Highly recommend it. It's related to it's gonna understand, your brain and what's actually our brain is. It's uh,
Are you talking about
split
that
into.
Kahneman's book? Daniel
I'm sorry.
Kahneman's book. Is that the Daniel Kahneman's book that you're talking
Yes,
about? Oh,
yes,
that's
yes,
a masterpiece. I'm a big fan of that book as well. It's
yes.
phenomenal. Yes.
A
Think fast and
phenomenal
slow or
book.
something like that.
Everybody has to read
Right.
that book. But yeah, so again, we need to, first of all, we need to go back to matter of
Right.
response, right?
Right. Right.
Especially when it comes, something feels emotionally compelling,
Yeah.
urgent, or surprisingly warm and effective. Like all those things that you kind of like, if you see in the physical world, Shashank could be like, something is iffy,
Something
right?
is
If you
off.
see somebody's overly praising you, somebody that you don't really know well, or it's super warm, or like understands you, kind of like, that's too much. Well,
Yeah.
again,
Get
we need to
suspicious.
use exactly.
Right.
So verification has to be a reflex, not an afterthought. That's what it is. That's actually what we have left, because as you said, it just gets better and better. If you look at deepfake 3 months ago, and now it's already a big difference. It's only 3 months, right?
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
look at the technology, so we need to go back to our I'll say fundamental factors, what actually trust is, and actually go ahead and rewire all of that into a detection skill, because that's the only thing that we have left.
Very
It's
true. Very
only
true.
gonna get better.
Yeah, no, no, and it's an important piece to think about. I don't even know what tools may be out there, right, or how we approach it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, the question that it also brings up, as you were speaking to it again, sort of explaining this unfolding of the trust being sort of reshaped, right? We have a certain way today that we try to train people to find fraud, to detect suspicious activity, to say, hey, don't click on this link because this is what bad looks like. So we've trained ourselves to do certain things, right? And we also, in our discipline, like especially in cybersecurity, we've been doing a lot of this security training or awareness training.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you flip that in the world of AI with all these deep fakes, voice clones, emotional sort of chatbot conversations flowing through and being more and more human or human like, right, with every interaction. As we get into that realm, our traditional methods of, hey, make people aware, let's train them, is that going to work? You think that's going to get challenged? Like, where does that fall in? The whole idea of let's train people, give them the tools, give them what the rules look like. Would that even be useful?
We train people for compliance, not to be defenders, right? And I want to
That's
say
true.
this carefully, because I know, including me, we put a lot of effort in this security awareness training, right? And
Of course.
but the researcher are pretty, it's kind of, the research is pretty uncomfortable, right, with this, because telling people what to watch out for doesn't reliably change what they do in the moment. Let's just be honest, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure,
That's
sure.
the reality. So
Of course.
here's um, the psychological part that make people vulnerable, the need to please authority, or the fear of conflict, or the desire to be helpful, emotionally reactivate under pressure, right? When we're under pressure, those emotions, like, they activate instantly.
Right.
So those patterns don't go away because someone watched a 10 minutes training video. They still remain, but they're still there. um, so actually, in fact, that's actually the real risk in training that focuses on shame and blame a lot, right? Where you clicked, we need to build a culture that it's not about shame and blame. Not
Right.
that, hey,
Right.
you should know better. Really, you clicked on your Facebook request that came from, on your work email. We need to meet people where they are, not what we want them to be. Because again, when we make this security training, there are people different level, right? So that's one of the things that I think, as we, as part of this industry and organizational, we make that's one of the mistakes that we make. So what actually from a behavioral science perspective tells us that it will work better instead of shame, blame? I can tell you that psychological safety first will work better. People need to feel they can say, I think I clicked on something, I'm sorry, or I should have not clicked, being without being humiliated or shamed, right? The organization that it's acceptable and it's open catches the mistake before the incident happened, right? We need to have the psychological safety first. Another one, I'll think it's emotional intelligence over click a list. Like we have this click list, right? Oh, here's the list, click of list, like list of clickers, and here they are, and we do reports and so on. A person that can recognize in the moment that they are feeling rushed, pressured, maybe they had a bad day, maybe they had a family issue, maybe they were like, I can tell you a story about me, how I clicked on the phishing email, even though it was from, a phishing campaign from a company, but I was outside on my patio because I wanted to put myself, because a lot of the times we think people in cybersecurity cannot get scammed and phished. Well, yes, we can. I was outside on the patio with my laptop still working. My son was playing in the backyard, and I put my laptop on the little table outside. And obviously I didn't close it because my son was playing in the playground in the backyard. So I was thinking he's not going to come. I'm going to run really quick to get a glass of water. By the time I came, my son already clicked on a couple, things on my laptop. And guess what? He clicked exactly on the email and he opened the phishing. So it's kind of like, it's still a vulnerability, right? But what I'm saying, we all vulnerable to something. I would have been smarter if I closed the laptop, but I was like, oh, he's not gonna get here by the time I go in the kitchen. And with the little ones, they are so fast. It's pretty impressive. But anyone can be. What I'm saying, everybody is vulnerable, and sometimes we don't look at what state of mind was that person in. Right? Are they lonely? Are they vulnerable at something? Somebody, maybe they have a sickness, maybe they pressure, maybe they have a lot of work to do, maybe they jumping from meeting to another, right? There's so many things. So emotional intelligence needs to be over click list. We just don't look at the click list as you clicked, right? But we need to ask why. And I think another one, the third one that I put, which kind of I started with, culture, not compliance. We need to stop providing security training just to check a box. Compliance.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Well, that's how it is today, though, right? Like, unfortunately, and sometimes I think for many organizations, like at least we're doing something, right? Like something is better than nothing is unfortunately the kind of, outlook. But you're right, and I think there are two pieces that I want to kind of double click on, if you may, going with that click analogy. So, first things first is like, you're right. The blame and shame is actually a problem across board. I think it even applies to people falling for deep fakes. It was like, oh, how did you not spot that? And it's easy to say that in hindsight, right? Like once you already know, like, hey, it was a phishing link or it was a fake, whatever artifact. I think everyone pretends to be an expert, but I think we can all fall for it. It looks so genuine, and there are so many other factors. The emotional aspect, yes, absolutely. I'm with you on that. Your mood, your rush, your urgency, your things, they all have a way in terms of how we react to stuff. Sometimes I also worry about what you mentioned earlier, the fact that we are checking our phones 180 plus times or whatever that you mentioned number, right, a day, worries me. And it happens with me all the time, Tatiana. I'm on the road most of the time, meeting customers, traveling, whatever, and I'm responding to multiple things while I'm at the airport, going somewhere, running my grocery. Like I'm nonstop on my phone in a funny way, and I have to kind of stop and pull myself back. But I don't see myself as an exception anymore. Unfortunately, I'm the norm. Each one of us are doing that, right? We're trying to multitask, respond to things, work, personal, what have you, right from our phones or from our desktop. And like you said, in your case, you just walked in to bring something 2 minutes. You don't know what's going to unfold in those 2 minutes, right?
Exactly.
And I think part of the problem is possibly that, as you kind of rightly said, we got to slow down a little bit. But the system isn't allowing us, and our brain is also wired to that, too much of that stimulation. And sure, in that whole stimulated environment, yeah, we can click through things, right? We can make mistakes. We can have those emotional, judgmental issues for sure. So yeah, I'm totally on board on that. Now, there is another aspect of that which I've been thinking about lately. and I know you've thought about it and you've also spoken about it in the past, is there is one way you have, and I kind of started with that, you have the attention economy where you are
Yeah.
scrolling, but you kind of detach from it, you see things, you decide what you want to do with it. And that's where I would say also part of the behavioral things around clicking a link comes in, right? You get an email, it's like it says, hey, you got to send this money, otherwise so and so is in distress. Oh, you this is pending, and you click it, right?
Yep.
But there's the other side of it when you're interacting with that system, right? So like, hey, I'm talking to a customer service agent, right? And they are asking me about the problem I have, or I have, just being on my chat window and being myself and interacting for whatever the context may be. I suspect that one, we are more gullible in that situation, but also we are being influenced, isn't it? I mean, every time we are chatting with a chatbot, the chatbot is becoming more human and we are becoming more chatbot, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yep.
kind of a funny two-way interaction going on there. What's the science there, or what have you learned there? What have you observed there? I'm very keen to kind of get my own head around how is this new behavior, the attachment economy, not the attention
Mm.
economy anymore, is shaping us. Are we changing every day, like the way we think ourselves?
So it's, I will say, AI companions, and it's reshaping trust in general. So let me give you some stats so you kind of understand what's going on. That's been a survey done. It's called READ Project in March 2026, so it's not that old, right?
Okay.
And they surveyed young people, and when I say young, it's age 13 to 24, which, if you think about, that's the age that's most affected, where most they grew up with AI in the phone with AI in their hands, and the numbers are staggering. You kind of stopped me off my rails a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
They said that 47% of, and they survey around over 2,000, well, I think 2,500 young people. So they said 47% of them, they rather talk to AI over human when it comes to feelings and emotions. So almost half of them choose to talk
Okay.
to AI companion when it comes to
Yeah.
emotional and
Mm-hmm.
feelings. 18% of us use it daily, on a daily basis.
There
It's
you
not
go.
one time, right?
Very large
It's not
percentage.
like, hey, I feel today sad, where I'm
Mm-hmm.
maybe had something at work and I need. No, it's daily. Most staggering is 15%, which is, if you think about, maybe it's small, but it's big.
Yeah.
Big, if you to look at the data. 15% describes themselves being in a relationship. And when I say relationship, as the relationship defined, right, by the psychologist, they say they're in a relationship with an AI, not using it as a tool. 15%.
Mm-hmm.
And that relationship can be as a companion, as a friend, as a guide, as a therapist, as a romantic relationship, right? And then 33% of all of this young said that they are doing without any guidance. They don't know much about it. It's kind of monotone. They just go there, you start talking, right? So
Yeah.
I'm telling you, not that this is scary, but this data tells you something.
Of course.
One thing that they actually concluded: what is the control that we can put in place? What can we help so we can make the young people that surveyed? They asked them to start talking to AI. We're trying to talk to humans more, and they say they turn to AI more when they feel they're not seen or heard. Right?
I see. So part of loneliness, detachment is kind of playing.
Exactly. So that's what they feel, because again, if we go back to the AI development, think about this. It's an
Right.
emotional bond, right? He knows your name. He knows what you like and what you don't like. It's available. He never judges you. He never gets tired. As a parent, for example, I'll give yourself as a parent, a 5 years old daughter. She asks hundreds of questions a day. When I cook, and I say, honey, can we, or she wants to play with me. I say, honey, I'm cooking, right? You have so many things to do as a parent, as a partner, right? But this piece of software there is always available. It never challenges you, which that's another problem. So what does it do? If you think about it, removes the condition of building resilience. Because if you think about, real relationships, they complicated. There is a lot of friction, right? But also there is a lot of work to go and fix the relationship so they can last over time, right? That builds resilience. You fail, you forgive, you do it again. That's all part of human evolution. When AI is removing the self-condition of building resilience. What else is going to be left?
Very
What
good
is
point.
they? What is there left, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because there is no resilience. You're always right. You're always the best, right? Your feelings are correct. They're always validated. So that's a huge problem, especially with young generation that grew up with AI because they have not seen the life before AI. We did, right?
Yeah,
I still remember playing outside. They don't. They
yeah.
don't want to interact with humans. So they don't know what it's life before AI. They only know what life with AI is. And that's it.
Very true, very true. Too much of online sort of interaction, too much
Yeah.
of this positive reinforcement. I think the resilience
Yes.
factor is totally missing. I would almost also think in terms of, there's an emotional immune system
Mm-hmm.
that's not even being built or challenged, right? Like you're not getting
Absolutely.
anything, any sort of a natural training to even understand what that looks like. Um, and yeah, and that's the ramifications are multiple. I mean, there's a lot in terms of how we think and interact, but also in terms of our real life, right? There's a lot more complexity building.
Yep.
In such a situation though, where this doesn't seem to be going away, this is only becoming
Mm-hmm.
more, right? Like I don't think that you touched upon one important point of culture, and I think that point
Mm-hmm.
in time when you were saying that was largely from a standpoint of cyber training, and I would say more structured sort of situations. How does this human centric, if you may, intervention, if I were to use that word sort of loosely, look
Mm-hmm.
like? Like, what should be done, right? Because I just feel like we can't just sit back and feel helpless and say, oh, too bad, things are just going downhill. We can see it. And some of us, as you rightly mentioned, who have kind of lived two lives, right? Seen the world before AI and then post AI, are able to also maybe even see that stark difference at a very fast pace, sort of emerging. What can and should we do, both organizationally and personally? Are there tools, are there techniques to make things more human centric, to start thinking in terms of this trust, if you may, as you mentioned, the trust plane is changing. Is there a way for us to discern that trust plane? Is there some things that we can teach our children, our colleagues, like what's out there? What can be done? Is there anything out there that can be done around this?
Yes, and I think it starts with us because you if you wanna start with your home with you yourself with us. So for the parents, usually because we always talk about the younger generations, we discussed the 13 to 24. We need to understand it's a tool, right? I start actually writing a little books, storybooks that kind of talks about, and the way I put the books is based on the age, and I talk about that AI is a tool. It doesn't have feelings, it doesn't have emotions, it doesn't have any interest in your well-being. So start with this understanding with your kids because again, you're not going to be able to hold them back. They're going to use it no matter what, right? That's just the world. That's how where we go. But we need to understand it's a tool, right? It's not, and we need to start talking now, not 20 years after, like we did with social media. It took us 20 years,
Correct.
almost 20 years to actually recognize, yes, it creates depression and anxiety and more, right? Let's not wait. Let's learn from the previous mistake, from the attention economy that we discussed earlier, and start talking now. Another thing is, as a community, whatever community you're part of, we are part of cybersecurity community. Start talking.
Right.
My interest peaked into cyber psychology because when I do a lot of incidents, I'm involved in a lot of incidents, cyber risk assessments, into secure awareness training. And the question I always asked, I was like, has to be more than just what person clicked on the link. It has to be something psychological. Like,
Yeah.
why, right? So that interest actually got me here. And I was like, somebody told me about cyber psychology, and then I got into it. As a community, start speaking on the global level. I know it's difficult, even on the country level, right? We need to ask for ethical development of AI, and I know it's very difficult. Okay,
Right.
and we know better what the industry says, but I think if we can start with us, because everything starts in your home, in your environment. Start small and go from there. Never start speaking. Talk to your kids. Talk to whoever. Like I'll talk to you through a casual conversation. You're like, oh wow, I picked your curiosity. That's what I try to do with everyone, because we can resolve a problem that we don't understand. People don't even understand. When I tell, last weekend I was visiting a friend of mine, And I was trying to explain to her cyber psychology, and she
Yeah.
exactly said that. Well, there's no way I'll get addicted to talking to AI chatbot. And then I explained her actually the psychology behind it. And she looked at me, she said, oh, now I can see how I can actually,
Right.
explaining. But a lot of people don't know that because they don't, either they're not in the field where it's just kind of a little bit complex, right? It's like, what? Somebody's hacking my mind and my emotions? What are you talking about, right? It's very, because it's not talked and explained well, right? That's one of the problems. So we need to, as in, we need to ask why, understand it, and then start, taking measures. But again, start small, you know, start somewhere. Because as you said, if we sit and do nothing, then we're gonna have a bigger problem than we have with social media and all the effects of it.
Totally, totally.
20
Actually,
years
again,
later.
I'm so happy that we spent some time talking about this because there are two or three things you pointed out which is so critical, so important. Like first thing is just even having a conversation on this, right? We took too long for us to talk about all the downsides of social media and attention economy. Well, let's not repeat the mistake, right? So that by itself is so true, right? Like let's just take that head on right now and at least bring it, surface it. The second piece, I feel my 2 cents there, Tatiana, is like, I think it brings us also the defenses on. Like the moment somebody
Mm-hmm.
says, "Hey, you can fall for it," you can be emotionally manipulated. I think the immediate first reaction again is like, "Oh no, not me." Like I'm resilient. I can handle this. Um, but I think when you peel the onion, when you go deeper, and so well, it's not like it's some simple button that has been pressed and you are aware of it, and it's not your fault, right? Like again, it's not blame and shame, but
Yeah.
this is just unfolding without us realizing. This is how psychology works. I think it puts us all in a little bit more comfortable position, if I were to use that, to acknowledge it, to say,
Yes.
yeah, I could fall for it. Yes, indeed. That sounds quite real, right? And then you start relating, like even when you were telling me right now to some of these, I was
Yep.
kind of relating in my mind some of the times when I must have felt like that or clicked or whatever, like, well, yeah, that was like a dangerous place. I shouldn't be like thinking like that or keep the demarcation between tool versus, feelings and human. But it's
Yep.
going to be a tough battle for sure. And I think, going to the
Yes.
point, right? Like the whole commercials, the economics is kind of against us, which is kind of scary and weird, right? And that's why also so
Absolutely.
much pushback, right, on even AI regulation and stuff like that. Um,
Yep.
we are almost at that segment. We will start wrapping up. But before I sort of let you go, I want to ask you a couple of very quick things. Um, so, in terms of a person who's listening to you, right, who just first time understood about cyber psychology, right? Interesting
Mm-hmm.
word, very meaningful, very deep, very pertinent in today's time. Where can they go and find more information about it? Should they approach it? Should they just do some Google search, look up videos, read about it? Like, where's all the good content about this stuff?
I actually got a little list here because I have a lot of people who ask me this, and there's people who one of the psychologists that I actually follow a lot, and he is the one I think that started. Maybe he was Dr. Zach Steiner, and he is the one who appeared on multiple, well, I'll say a few podcasts, but also if you go to I follow human, and I'll tell you right now so I don't give you human technology.
Yeah, yeah. And also, please
Yeah.
do share. When we publish this out
Yes,
there, we'll put the links out there
absolutely. I
for
can
others.
share with you some of the arts, but there's a lot of people that I start following. The some of like psychologists that start talking, psychologists that actually start seeing in their clinic in 2025 for the first time the patients in coming and have an AI psychosis. And I don't know if familiar with AI psychosis, but if you can define, like hallucinations, that they have this idea they're in relationship with
Mm-hmm.
AI chatbot. So they was for the first time when and usually there were patients that maybe had some depression or something, nothing too severe, but they're lonely, depression, maybe they went through a divorce, and they start, having this relationship in quotation, with an AI chatbot, and they were so they were hallucinating, saying that yes, this is real, and they know the best, and they understand me the best. So psychologists and psychiatrists for the first time started seeing such things, and they're like, we don't know how to, we don't have an answer. They were
Mm-hmm.
like kind of like,
Yeah.
we don't know how to
Yeah.
fix it. We don't know how to. So I'll definitely share it, but there is a lot already. Not as much. I'll also write articles on the subject on Medium, which I'm gonna share a couple of the articles that I write.
You sure?
The article are based on research that I do through my cyber psychology courses. So this is all research together. It's not personal opinion. I try to stay kind of away from personal opinion because there's a lot of research already. It's not as much as you would like to be, but there's already a lot of people are talking there. So LinkedIn, follow the right people on LinkedIn. That is a lot. But yeah, what I wanted to say to anyone who is listening to this, just remember that this is, you're not feeling like you're not the only one who's feeling like Shashank, as you said. This is not to scare you. What I want them is to actually understand when you interacted with the AI chatbot, the length that you interacted with. If your child is interacting, you need to understand and have that conversation. Sit down and have a conversation with your child, okay? And explain this is just a tool. If you ask him to help you with math or maybe history or anything, it's a different thing. It doesn't have emotions. It doesn't care about you, okay? We're seeing many cases which were terrible cases and outcomes from this lately. And kids are more susceptible because their mind is not fully developed, right? They are going through a lot of changes. They have a lot of questions, especially during the teenage years and adolescent. So they're more dangerous with this. But don't talk to anyone who is interested or who is not. I try to speak to anyone who actually even ask me what I do, because I think the word has to be spread around. So
Totally,
yeah.
totally. I couldn't agree more. The word has to be spread around. More people have to be aware of this.
Yep.
Super interesting conversation. Loved it, Tatiana. Thank you for spending the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Before I
Thank you
let
for
you
the
go,
interest.
yes, no, before I let you go, one last thing for people who would listen, and it happens to me every time I record and put something. I was like, hey, how do we find that person? Well, tell us, where are you online? Where do people find you? All these people
I'm
get,
on LinkedIn.
you're on LinkedIn.
I'm on LinkedIn, Tatiana Merry, like Merry Christmas. That's what I tell people. Yeah, they can find me there. I'm pretty active, especially on this subject. But yeah, and also I will leave my email if anyone wants to reach out or any questions or anything like that. Again, I'm happy. I go do a bunch of volunteering work. I go to schools, I go to churches and speak about this subject because a lot of parents are interested in and they lost. They tell me that kids know more than they do, so they can't really help them. So it's a very sometimes desperate situation, right? But yeah, LinkedIn is the best way to contact me for sure.
Phenomenal. I would encourage everyone to. Lots of good content, and I know Tatiana keeps, presenting a lot of leading edge work in this space. That's how it caught my attention, and I'm so glad again to have this conversation. Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Shashank.
Wonderful to
Thank
have
you.
you.
Thank you, Shashank.